Hello and welcome to the Sports Station. I'm your host, Mark Insera, alongside Mike Eccles. Dan Graham unfortunately could not make it today. He'll be back next week, but this is our fourth episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be jumping around the world of sports like we usually do. We got some Major League Baseball, some pennant races going on. Of course, we'll have Mike's now famous final segment of the show where he throws something at us that we're a little unprepared for. But first place we want to start off right now is we're going to jump into some preseason NFL action. We had a whole slate of preseason games take place this week, Mike. We had the Jets play with the Giants play. We had all the other teams. We had some of the rookie quarterbacks like Manziel and Bridgewater, Bortles get their first action. But the first place we want to talk about, because we spent a whole lot of time on the Giants last week, so the first place we want to go is towards the New York Jets, Mike. Jets played their first preseason game. What did you think about
First thing I want to do, and I don't want to plug anybody else, but I have to thank the NFL Network. Because I have to tell you, I spend a lot of time this weekend with my wife. We go out and do a lot of good things.
Wait, you're married?
I am marred, and I got one of those things on my hands that says so.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. You were at the wedding. You remember.
Yeah,
Anyway. Wow, you know what? Just any time during the weekend, you'd catch the local broadcast of the preseason games. Of course, here in New York City, it was NBC4 that televised it. You saw their broadcast on the NFL Network, but just getting to watch all the games. And one of the things, and I want to ask you about this too as we get ready to talk about the Jets and the Giants, if there's one thing that has really got me involved now in preseason games is that HBO program, Hard Knocks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because, for all the years, preseason games, now I remember when I was a kid in the late 70s, number one, they didn't make the season ticket holders buy the preseason tickets.
Yeah.
So they would be like nobody in the stands or people who never normally went to games. Number two, because they had trouble selling tickets, they would never show preseason games live. Mm-hmm. So I would have to stay up as a 12-year-old kid. I'd have to stay up till midnight on Channel 11 to watch preseason games. But ever since this Hard Knocks came on, boy, you really do catch yourself involved in the third and fourth quarters of a preseason game, even though the starters have had their pads off for about 2 hours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because you know that thanks to Hard Knocks that somebody is playing their butts off to win a job in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So thank you, NFL Network, showing all those games. I was involved in all of them, watching, just wondering, is this kid going to make it on the team, this defensive end, or is this running back going to make it? He's only fourth string, but real exciting. Jets and Giants, I have to tell you, Jets, I think, like we talked about last week with, who's the ghost guy that's usually here?
Dan
Graham,
Dan.
I think the Jets are definitely going to be solid on that defensive line.
Yeah.
And then everything else, you know what? With the exception of maybe Mangold at center and DeBrickashaw at the tackle, everything else is still a little up for grabs.
Yeah,
I think I like Eric Decker, but we want to make sure it's not Peyton Manning throwing to you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And he doesn't have Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker and Julius Thomas to take the pressure off him. This is a guy who's never been a number one wide receiver before, and the Jets have brought him in to be just that, to be their number one guy.
Number one and for big money.
Absolutely. So this is a guy who's going to be taking on a role that he has never had before, who's going to be dealing with the best cornerback rather than the second or third best cornerback that the other team has to offer. So this is a completely new set of responsibilities the Jets have handed him as the number one wide receiver there. And I agree with you on the defense, at least in terms of the front. They're off the defensive line. I thought Damon Harrison had a great game the other day. And I also thought, in terms of the secondary, I thought D. Milliner had an outstanding game. Milliner had a couple pass deflections. I thought he played really well. He looked a lot more like the guy that he was in the second half of the season than he was in the first half of the season for the Jets.
Yeah.
And but the biggest negative take out of that game, though, Mike, I don't know if you noticed, is Demetri Patterson, who is the other cornerback that they signed to be kind of their nickel or slot corner, had a terrible game.
which
got
is
beat
not
2 or
good.
3
Yeah.
times.
No,
Yeah.
the Jets do not need a defensive backfield that's doing terrible because they're not going to get the 100% pass rush every time. The real hard up the middle pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody gets just a little time and your secondary's there is no more Revis Island back there anymore.
No, absolutely. And they just lost Miller to a high ankle sprain.
I know.
He's
saw
injured.
that.
He's he could miss time on the regular season. And the point you made, Mike, about the blitzes was spot on. I mean, this is a guy, Rex Ryan. We know he loves to bring pressure. He wants to bring blitzes. They brought 4 or 5 blitzes last night, and none of them got to Andrew Luck. And Kyle Wilson and Patterson got burned a couple times on those plays for first downs. So if they can't put together a blitz scheme that's going to actually put pressure on the quarterback, their cornerbacks aren't good enough to then pick up the slack and hold their coverage long enough to allow the blitz to do what it was meant to do, get to the quarterback.
Well, if you're a Jets fan, there's one thing that you're hoping for, and you're hoping that's only reason why the blitz didn't work is because the Colts have consistently had one of the best O-lines in the NFL. And, of course, whether it was for Peyton Manning and then immediately transferring over to Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
They go O-line in the draft and free agency. They make sure that guy's protected.
Yeah.
So at least if it didn't work in the first preseason game, at least you could think, well, they were going up against the top offensive line in the NFL, or at least one of them.
Yeah, for sure. That's one thing that's been remarkable when you talk about Indianapolis is the fact that other than the year when they went 2-14 or whatever it was and kind of earned the right to draft Andrew Luck, their offensive line and their offense has been pretty solid for years, going back to the days when they had what's his name, Jim Mora as the head coach back in the 90s. In the late 90s.
Playoffs?
Yeah.
You're talking playoffs?
That guy.
I feel so bad. It's funny. You reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was such a fantastic coach for so many years, and yet people will always remember. And now he laughs at it.
Of course.
He does. He does laugh at it.
You
But
can't do anything but.
no.
I mean, it's the same thing with Dennis Green for the they are who we thought they were thing.
and we let them off the hook.
It's at some point in time you're going to have to laugh at it because if it gets under your skin, no one's going to let it go at that point.
Yeah, and the worst part was that they had some very successful years in Minnesota, the Dennis Green era.
Well, Jim Mora was the first coach ever to lead the New Orleans Saints to the playoffs. People forget that back in 1987.
And before that,
Mm-hmm.
let's see, who did he coach before the Saints?
Who did Jim Mora coach? I think he coached. Did he coach in the USFL?
Yes.
I don't know who he coached.
He coached the only team that went to the championship game all 3 years it was in existence.
Baltimore, the Baltimore Stars.
First, they were the Philadelphia
Stars. Then.
For 2 years, they were Philadelphia. So he lost the first game, won the second championship game, and then I think he lost the third game. I'm not sure. But yeah, he coached all 3.
They won the last 2.
They won the last 2.
I think they had Reggie. He had Reggie White on that team, didn't he?
No, Reggie White played for the Memphis Showboats.
Yes.
Well, who he did have, though, is he had, for Giants fans, Bart Oates.
Wow. Maurice Carthon
He
was
had
on that team?
Maurice Carthon was
in
a
New
general.
Jersey.
Yeah. He had Kelvin Bryant, the kid out of North Carolina, who ended up winning a Super Bowl with the Redskins in '87. He just had all kinds of really good players that happened to play for that team. And, Sam Mills.
Really?
Sam Mills, the middle linebacker, who he then brought to the Saints with him. Was the key to that defense that went to all 3 championship games.
Mills and Ricky Jackson.
Oh, Ricky Jackson.
With the Saints, I should say.
But with the Saints, not with Philadelphia,
the
Stars, the Philadelphia, Baltimore, or whatever. There were so many teams that switched. And the funny part is, you know what? I don't mind segueing into this. I love the USFL.
Oh, no.
I still go to YouTube and watch some of those games.
It is remarkable when you look back, because you tell people now, there was a second NFL league in the 80s. They're thinking, well, who could have played on those teams? There was Reggie White, Steve
Hall of
Young,
Famers played in
Jim
that league.
Kelly,
especially Jim Kelly.
Mm-hmm. There were these. There were a whole slew of great players who played in that league. You mentioned Bart Oates. We mentioned Maurice Carthon. Herschel Walker still holds the record for rushing yards in a season in professional football with 2,400 yards.
Yeah, it was like 2,400 yards
with
for
the New Jersey
Generals.
Generals. Yeah, to be fair, it was an 18-game season rather than a 16-game season, but a remarkable feat nonetheless.
Oh, yeah. Now, let's granted, I mean, if he's facing the Memphis Showboats, he's got Reggie White on the right side of the line. On the left side of the line, he's got a guy who probably was third string at Akron, or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was still a fun game to watch. The Tampa Bay Bandits were an excellent team all 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
Had a great player named Gary Anderson. And, I love watching old USFL games. Unfortunately, by the middle of the second season, the seats were empty.
Yeah.
And they continued to be empty. One team in particular I always liked was the Breakers.
New Orleans Breakers. Marcus
They
Dupree
were the Boston Breakers first.
Oh, really?
The New Orleans Breakers second. The Portland Breakers third. They were in 3 different cities all 3 years of the USFL.
Wow.
And also, besides who'd you just mention, Marcus Dupree?
Yeah.
Craig James.
That's right.
Who, as soon as he left,
really?
As soon as he left the Breakers, went, of course, to the Patriots.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, and went to that Super Bowl against the Bears. The 46 defense.
That's a good segue back to the Jets, their 46 defense. That's what Rex Ryan was trying to play. Now, we talked about their defense, Mike. This was on offense, the debut for, you mentioned Eric Decker, as well as Chris Johnson and Michael Vick. Now, what did you think of the quarterback play? Because I thought Vick played and of Chris Johnson, because I thought Vick played a little better than Geno Smith, and I thought Chris Johnson, for the first game of the preseason, had a few impressive moments.
No. I liked Chris Johnson for the first preseason game.
Yeah.
I think Chris Johnson's going to be fine.
I agree.
Okay, I loved him with Tennessee. I think he's going to be fine. I'm not bothered by the fact that I agree with you about Michael Vick looking just a little bit better than Geno, but I'm sorry. I know he's in his 17th year, Michael Vick. He's still in great shape, but I would not go with Michael Vick over Geno Smith.
Really?
No.
Even if Vick outplays Smith in the preseason?
It all depends on who he's going up against. One of the things that you always have to look at is Geno going up against the first-string defense in the preseason games.
That's true. That's a good point.
And Vick going up against the second-string defenses. Yeah. I'm really skeptical about Geno. Just has the vitality, the youth. Sure, he's a little inexperienced, but he is the future. And that's one of the things you always got to make when you go in with a quarterback. You always have to look at who's going with who's going to be the future of the team. And I think Cleveland is having that problem right now because they know Manziel is the future of the Cleveland Browns.
I agree.
Not Hoyer. Even though Hoyer has more experience right now, where do we go with the future?
Well, that's the thing with, you're never going to find a young quarterback who has experience. That's just that just comes with the territory. Now, did you have a chance to watch, because I got a chance to watch both Hoyer and Manziel play. Because, like you said, the NFL Network, like you said, that is so much fun. You get to watch almost every game. Obviously, you can't watch all the games at the same time, but they replay every single game.
Yes.
You get to go back and watch all of them. Did you have a chance to watch Manziel and Hoyer?
Yeah, and you know what? Johnny Manziel is going to bring something that Hoyer can't do.
Of course.
And that's unpredictability. And what I mean by unpredictability is not so much from I'm the offensive coordinator, I don't know what Johnny Football's going to do.
Yeah.
I'm talking from the defensive part. When you're when you're the defensive coordinator, you're sending in the signal to the middle linebacker, he's calling the plays out there. Okay? You're putting out a certain coverage based on the way the receiver set up. You think he's going back to a straight pocket passer.
Yeah.
And then he scrambles. And then he goes to the right, and then he comes back to the left. And you don't know what he's going to do. You don't know where he's going to go. And that just really frustrates a defensive coordinator.
Well, it's the exact same thing that Seattle and San Francisco have done so well, or have used to their advantage the last few years with Kaepernick and Russell Wilson, who've become two of the most recognizable and successful quarterbacks of the last 2 seasons. Kaepernick took the 49ers to the Super Bowl almost 2 years in a row. Wilson won the Super Bowl, obviously.
Kaepernick too.
Yeah, and these two guys are great at both throwing and running. They're dangerous with and without the ball, I guess you could say.
I think Manziel can be better.
You think Manziel can be better?
I think he has the potential. I'm not a big Johnny Football guy, but I think that what he brings to the table and what we saw at an A&M and what I saw just last week in the preseason game,
really,
I think he's going to bring a little bit more than what Wilson and Kaepernick. And all right,
that's
now here's
saying
the
a
defense.
lot.
Now here's the defense. Okay. The reason why is I think that those two guys are just slightly restricted by their offensive coordinators.
Really?
I think they want them to... You know how offensive coordinators are in the NFL? You'll get a scrambling quarterback, and they want to make them a pocket passer. Or at least stay in the pocket a little bit more. And I think that Kaepernick and Wilson have probably been restricted since they became the full-time starters.
Really? Okay.
I think Manziel is not going to be restricted.
I think that's
interesting. The Browns need a spark.
Well, hey, no one would disagree with you on that one. I think that's interesting, though, because you're seeing a lot of teams, and we saw it when Tebow was started for the Broncos. You're seeing these offensive coordinators and head coaches changing their offense to adjust to take advantage of all of the skills that these players possess. You see Kaepernick and Wilson and Tebow running read options, or at least Tebow was running read options in Denver. Right. You see them running plays that allow the quarterback to bootleg, to scramble, to get out of the pocket more, and to open up and to get them in a situation where the defense has to make a choice, whether I come up and stop the quarterback or back up and try and get in front of the wide receivers, keep him from completing a pass. But see, I disagree with you when it comes to Manziel, just from the perspective of, I feel like Manziel has bought into his celebrity, which is something that Wilson and Kaepernick didn't have when they came out of college. They didn't have the ego that Johnny Manziel has. And speaking of unpredictability, there was an element of that I saw. First of all, I thought Hoyer played better than Manziel in the first preseason game.
As a passer.
As a player.
But not as a... See, I disagree with that because, again, Manziel is keeping the middle linebacker on his heels. He's got a confused middle, because usually the middle linebacker is who's shading the quarterback, or shadowing the quarterback, excuse me. Shading. Like he's wearing Ray-Bans. No, he's the one who's shadowing the quarterback, and you can really confuse a middle linebacker with a Johnny Manziel.
I think that's fair. By the same token, this was the play that stood out to me the other night from the Cleveland game. There was a 4th and 1, you might remember, Cleveland had on like the Detroit 20-yard line. And they sent in a play where it was a kind of a bootleg one side where the fullback would slide out kind of past the marker, and just an easy like little dink pass that you get first down. And Manziel faked it. Play worked perfectly, rolled out. The linebacker took him. The fullback slid behind him and was wide open for a first down. But Manziel, rather than just making the easy play and throwing it to the fullback and getting the first down, decides to scramble away from this linebacker / defensive end and go for the corner rather than just make the easy play. Now, we got the first down, but the thing you mentioned going back to with Michael Vick was this is probably the Lions' second team. If you put the first team defense or first team defensive end out there, Manziel might not be able to make the play that he made. So this is a situation where I feel like his immaturity just led him, and his ego, how good he thinks he is, led him to make a play that was a little bit reckless, whereas he just could have made the safe play and made the throw for the first down, but he decided, I'm Johnny Manziel, I'll just do this myself. I don't think that's something you're going to be able to do when you face the best defenses in the NFL, the best athletes in the world.
Did he get the first down?
That's not the point, though.
Did he get the first down?
Wait a second.
Because I know exactly which play you're talking about.
Yes,
did he get the first down?
He got the first down.
Thank you very much.
He got I feel like, what's his name? I feel like Nick Frost and you're Simon Pegg and that movie The World's End, and I'm like, it's pointless arguing with you. That's how I feel right now.
No, but you definitely made a good point, but I'm convinced right now that if that was the first string defense for Detroit, Manziel still gets the first down.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's where we differ. That's what's great about this show. There's plenty of opportunity for disagreement and for sharing opinions. That's the whole reason we started this, because we felt like this would be a great environment for that kind of thing. And also, I should say, feel free to comment and subscribe on our YouTube page. And thank you for listening to all those out there listening. Now, right now, we want to transition.
Wait, hold on. Differences in opinion.
Okay.
But same grandparents.
That's true.
Go ahead.
Me and Mike don't just share a bond, we share blood.
We share blood.
That's right. So now moving on from the NFL where the season hasn't yet started, where we have Major League Baseball, where these pennant races, these player races are in full swing, Mike.
The Kansas City Royals. I can't believe I'm saying that in August.
Where are they?
They are in first
place. Yeah.
And I have not figured out yet how Detroit had just started to crumble since the All-Star break.
I think people are still trying to figure out exactly what's happening in Detroit. They look like a team that's just trying to pick up the pieces right now, because no one would debate that Detroit's more talented than Kansas City. I think that's obvious. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
But how this team could then fall. I mean, we were talking last week about how it seemed like a foregone conclusion. We were already excited for the Oakland-Detroit ALCS, and now Detroit's a team that's fighting to get into the playoffs.
I was quoting Mark Price.
David
directly.
Price?
David Price, not Mark Price. Duh.
That's okay.
David Price, directly. He said, I walked into the clubhouse in Detroit for the first time, and it was like I was on an all-star team.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, he's now out of first place.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, David, you know what? Maybe that Tampa team wasn't such a bad place to play, because I don't know what's happening with the Tigers right now, but they're certainly not winning.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, when they got Price, it just seemed like, all right, that's the final piece to this possibly championship puzzle. And now, but right after the trade, the trade deadline was the 31st. Now, to be fair, they were already on starting a losing streak. Then at the end of July, they finished July by losing 5 out of 6. And then in August, they sweep the Rockies, but then they lose 3 out of 4 to the Yankees. They lose 2 out of 3 in Toronto. including that long 19-inning game that we
Yes.
saw on Sunday. Now, that's a fluky thing, though. I mean, but the one thing that Dan and I were talking about recently was you look at that game, and Detroit's up 5-0 in that game going into the 6th or the 7th inning, and Price gives up 5 runs in the 7th inning. Now, we gave up 2 or 3 runs, and they took him out, and the relievers let the inherited runner score.
Right.
And then they ended up losing it in 19 innings. This team, all of a sudden, doesn't look like the juggernaut everyone thought that they were.
And I thought they were.
They're not who we thought they were, Mike.
Thank you, Coach Dennis Green. But, of course, the team that is who we thought they are is, of course, the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
And they just continue to romp right now. I mean, they're really not putting a great distance between them and the Angels. But then again, I think one of those two teams is most definitely going to get the first wild card spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Oakland A's are killers. And we're taping this August 13th of 2014. John Lester last night, another great performance for the A's.
Yeah, the A's, because those were the two, and we talked about this last week, that Price and Lester were the two big aces, the two big prizes to be had at the trade deadline. And, of course, we know Price went to Detroit, Lester went to Oakland, and so far Oakland looks like they're the one who got the better player. Both of those teams, I think, got off easy. I don't think they gave up as much as they should have to get those two pitchers, but Oakland looks like the one who made the team that made the better deal right now, because Lester looks fantastic.
Oh, he does. He does, and I really, right now, I know Baltimore's playing well.
Yes.
I really don't see anyone stopping Oakland from going to the World Series in the American League. Right now. Now, of course, that could change in September. You know, Mark, as well as I do, somebody slides into second on August 30th, breaks their ankle, key player,
you're right.
Changes everything. But right now, as we sit here on August 13th when we tape this, I don't see anyone in the American League stopping the Oakland A's from going to the World Series.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. And like you said, I mean, that's a great point. The idea of trying to project injuries and things like that, it's impossible. So I mean, you're one guy. I mean, Josh Donaldson could could get hit in the shoulder, and or he could separate his shoulder or get hit on the wrist and break his wrist, and a million things could happen. And that's one of the things that makes the baseball season so unpredictable, is that there are so many games. It's such a long season that a million things happen, and so much of it is not just about who has the best team, but who has the most depth. Who can adjust,
like who can step in and replace that player
exactly
if they do get hurt.
Exactly,
like a Brian Doyle.
Brian Doyle, wow.
Come on, you got the Yankee hat on. It reminded me of Brian. Willie Randolph goes down in 1978.
78, yep.
And Brian Doyle stepped up. What did he bat? Like 420 something
he
in
did
the
like
70 World
470
Series?
in the World Series.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. But of course, he disappeared a year later. But that was some depth that we never thought could happen.
He has one moment, and that's more than a lot of us have.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. He will always show up at Old Timers Day and always get a great round of applause from people, because we'll never forget that.
But this is my only thing when it comes to the A's. Now, I don't think anyone would debate that they're going to be in the playoffs, like you said. And the thing I was going to say, I don't know, I can't remember if I said this now. That's how bad my memory is getting. But you mentioned how they're only they're 3.5 in front of the Angels, but I think it would be hard for any team to pull away from a team as good as the Angels when it comes to a race. I mean, the Angels are a great team. But the only thing that scares me when it comes to the A's is their lineup. I mean, they don't have a lot of great hitters in that lineup. And when it comes to the postseason, you're only facing the best pitchers. And we saw this with the Yankees back in 2012. The Yankees had a lineup with guys like Teixeira and Swisher and Granderson and guys who were like 240, 250, 260 hitters that once they got into the postseason, they weren't able to match up with the best pitchers, the guys that were being thrown at the Yankees, especially in the ALCS, like Scherzer and Porcello and Verlander. And a lot of times what happens is, what can happen to a team with the A's who have good players, but players like Josh Donaldson, who's hitting 250, Britton Moss hitting 250, Jed Lowry hitting 230, Eric Sogard, who's hitting 213, is that you get a situation where these guys aren't facing any more pitchers with a 5 ERA. They're facing some of the best pitchers, like they're facing a Max Scherzer or a David Price or a Wei-Yun Chen or whoever the Orioles have to throw out there, or Garrett Richards or Jared Weaver for the Angels, and they don't get to face those bad pitchers anymore. They have to go up against the best, and a lot of times these 250 hitters kind of go into a shell.
Well, they do have to face a good pitcher every single game once you get into the postseason. But I think these are the kind of guys that find a way, because among the wins that they have, and I think they're about 25 games over 500 right now.
Yeah, they're 73 and 46.
Yeah. I mean, that's 27 games over 500.
Yeah.
They're finding ways. They're facing good pitchers every once in a while and finding a way for these 250 hitters to win those games. I have a lot of confidence in the the A's lineup right now. I like watching them when we catch them on either on Fox Sports 1 or ESPN 1.
Or
like
MLB Network,
MLB.
where they're on. Yeah.
It's just they're a fun team to watch. They're very, very confident in their abilities, even though hardly anybody knows who they are.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you talk about they have guys like Derek Norris and Stephen Vogt, two of their better players. The casual MLB fan has no idea who those guys are. And that's what makes this team fun, is you feel like these guys are easy to root for. There aren't any enormous egos. There's no A-Rod or Robinson Cano, or there's no Miguel Cabrera on this team. These guys are scrappers and fighters who are just trying to work their tails off every single day. And they're guys who worked hard to get there, who didn't have it handed to them.
You know what it reminds me of when you watch this A's team is, I don't know about people around the country, but here in the North Jersey area, there are a lot of great minor league teams that people like to go out and watch these minor league guys, young, scrappy, hungry, looking to get better.
Yeah.
And people love going to see either the
Lakewood Blue
Claws, or the Jackals over in Montclair, over at Yogi Berra Stadium.
Can-Am League.
And a lot of these other teams. Oh, in Somerset Patriots.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you watch the A's, it to me is like watching a minor league team that's hungry to get to the majors. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I think they play. They're scrappy. They work hard. They know they don't all have that all-star ability like you were talking about. We're not A-Rod. We're not Andrew McCutchen. We're not the superstar. But we're doing the best we can to win, and they're winning a lot.
And these guys, you all feel like they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, too.
Yeah, I mean, we have something to prove. You don't know who I am, but we're the best in baseball.
And plus the fact you have, I mean, these are guys, you look at guys like David Price or Justin Verlander or whoever it is, whoever you want to look at, almost anyone on the Yankees, and these are guys who have kind of been near the top of the mountain. David Price and Verlander and Scherzer have all pitched in the World Series. CC Sabathia, Derek Jeter, these guys have won World Series before. They've been near the pinnacle of near the top of their profession. These A's guys have never been there. They've been through years and years, and we talked about it before, about how the Tigers for a few years now have just been that roadblock that they've run into a few years, where they just seem to run into, they've run to Justin Verlander 2 years in a row in a Game 5, and he shut them down and sent them home. And these guys, now the front office is finally saying, all right, we're fully committing to this team. We're going to go for it. We're not holding anything back. Well, I mean, they gave up two of their best prospects in Addison Russell and Billy McKinney to get Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill. They're showing how committed they are to this team, and this team has to just feel that, and that has to make you feel great as a ball player to know that, all right, we're getting full support from the front office. Everyone's behind us. There isn't anything holding us back this year. This is our year to go get it, and that has to be a great feeling. That can only make this team better. And
I think the Yankees have proven that those pitchers for the Detroit Tigers aren't as scary as they used to be.
Oh, really?
Right now, they are not.
Okay. You think that's what it is? Because I'm not sure about that, because the Yankees in that series, it was the Yankees pitching staff that just outpitched the Tigers.
The Yankees outpitched the Tigers.
It's not like they blew the Detroit pitchers away.
No, but they could get to them.
Yeah.
And that's what's been happening on this losing streak, is that you're not seeing the Scherzers or the Verlanders shutting people down.
Yeah, we just talked about the game Price gave up 5 runs.
Right.
And how many times in his life has David Price blown a 5-run lead?
I can't think of it.
Very rarely, if ever. Yeah, and they just got beat in the 2 games they lost in Pittsburgh. They lost 11-6 in a game where Verlander, who's now under 500, he's become the least reliable pitcher on that pitching staff. And this is a guy who you can only imagine is the leader of that pitching staff. He's the veteran. He's the guy who's won Cy Youngs and MVPs. I mean, that has to kind of hurt the confidence of the other pitchers when they see their leader kind of getting knocked around. That's not going to make them, because they're going to think, well, I'm not as good as Justin Verlander, even though they might be this year.
But not only hurting their confidence, but giving confidence to the opposing batters.
Sure, of course.
Absolutely. Well, this isn't Justin Verlander's year, man. We're going to get to him today.
Yeah, this Verlander guy, he's not that good.
Right.
Like, we just scored 11 runs off of him.
Not this year.
Right, I know that.
Right.
But it's the same thing when you see, like, Jeter hit 270 that one year, and immediately all the players decided he was overrated. It's kind of a year-to-year thing, and Verlander might be kind of that guy this year.
Right now, yeah, opposing batters are not scared of Justin Verlander.
No, you're exactly right. And meanwhile, you have Sonny Gray, Scott Kazmir, John Lester, Jeff Samardzija, who are killing it game after game after game in Oakland, and that team's confidence is going through the roof while Detroit's starting to sag a little bit. And this is something that really is going to carry over for these teams. It's just going to help them as the season goes on, because they just start to feel better about themselves from the A's perspective.
Yeah, September is going to be a fun month in baseball.
No, absolutely. You're exactly right, especially if you live in Kansas City.
Oh, unbelievable. The
Yeah.
Kansas City Royals. God bless them. How they're doing it, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I know. And they don't have a regular in their lineup batting higher than 280.
No, it's just it's another scrappy bunch. Again, you're talking both Oakland and Kansas City, two of the smaller markets in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, you're right.
And they
Imagine
don't have
that.
the payrolls.
Imagine an Oakland, Kansas City ALCS.
And then they end up playing Pittsburgh in the World Series. We're talking the tiny markets here, baby.
That would be.
And they're just scrappy people. Just hey, we don't have the big payrolls, but we want to win.
Well, also you can imagine Oakland or Kansas City playing L.A., the ultimate small market versus big market, small payroll versus big payroll World Series.
And the Dodgers just might make it there, but
it'd be hard to argue against any team with Clayton Kershaw at the top of their rotation.
oh, he's so good. Kershaw is such a great pitcher, but Puig, for some reason, boy, he just still likes to make a mistake here every once in a while.
Yeah.
That just gets so magnified.
He's a little bit like Starlin Castro with the Cubs, because Castro has those mind lapses every once in a while, where
Yeah.
he just lets something like he drops or he forgets how many outs there were, or he doesn't turn a double play. And Puig's kind of the exact same player,
But unfortunately, the Cubs aren't going to see the playoffs anytime soon.
yeah.
All right, Mark.
Is it time, Mike?
It is that time
Fantastic.
where I go ahead and throw something at you from the clear blue that we did not go over, and I'm looking for your reaction. So here we go. I want you to tell me. Now, what I'll do is I'll tell you first, and as you're thinking about it, I'll talk about mine. Okay.
Okay.
And what this is your favorite performance by a professional athlete in a movie or television show.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
for me still, I'm an old guy here. Nothing beats after winning a Super Bowl like Joe Namath as a rugged Harley Davidson riding Hell's Angels type.
Was that the movie
dude.
with Ann Margaret?
CC Rider, baby. And of course, one of my favorite parts is, as I always wanted to do this, is the opening of the film, and old timers remember this from CC Rider. The opening of the film is he walks into a supermarket and he just eats lunch.
Yeah.
He's just going through the aisles, picking stuff out and opening up milk, and he just eats lunch without paying for anything, and then just walks out and gets on his motorcycle, sunglasses going, CC Rider. So definitely Joe Namath and CC Rider is my favorite performance by a pro athlete in a movie or a TV show.
Really? Wow. You forget about that. Joe Namath in that movie. Wow. Joe Namath was about as famous as you could be back in the day.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? It was a horrible movie. It made money.
Does he say to Ann Margaret, "I want to kiss you" at any point in time? No?
You know what? I don't remember the parts with him and Man Mark.
Okay. Really? I would have thought that would have been the only part of the movie you would remember.
I don't think she
You just
got
said it was a terrible movie.
Oh, it was a horrible movie. Horrible movie. But, the dialogue was not very well written. But you know what? Seeing Joe Namath on that motorcycle was very cool. That was very cool. All right, so are we talking about Brett Favre and There's Something About Mary?
Wow. Never seen that, actually.
Oh, he comes in at the end. It's not very good.
I know that, yeah.
But he's in the movie.
I know of it. I just have never seen it. One thing I will say, I've never seen this movie, but the movie He Got Game with Ray Allen, supposedly I've heard that Ray Allen's really good in that movie, but again, never seen it, so I wouldn't know. The number one for me, I think, has to be Bob Uecker in the Major League movies. People, and the thing about Bob Uecker is he's become such a big figure as a broadcaster in Milwaukee. People forget that he was a catcher in the Major Leagues for like 10 years. He won a World Series with the Cardinals in the 60s.
He was horrible.
But he played a lot more Major League games than a lot of other people did.
He was not very good except for one. What was his one claim to fame?
Well, he had a few. He had a homer off Sandy Koufax.
Well, that was it. His career average against Sandy Koufax is like 400 or something like that.
And he has a great story. He talks about this. I heard him in an interview talking about how, who he hit a homer off Gaylord Perry and Ferguson Jenkins as well. He hit a homer off Gaylord Perry, and Gaylord Perry said it was the worst day of his life.
Just a bit outside.
And he hit a homer off Koufax, and he says every time he sees Koufax, he apologizes to him. He said he was afraid that homer would keep Koufax out of the Hall of Fame. And Uecker goes, "Yeah, we needed it. It was the 10-1 game." He said, I looked over in the Dodgers dugout, and they were all in their street clothes, so I had to take him deep. He didn't have any other choice.
I must be in the front row.
That guy was the Euchre seats. I've been to Miller Park, and the seats in the upper deck, they call them the Euchre seats after that commercial.
After the commercial.
Anyone listening, go on YouTube and just search Bob Euchre commercial. There's a great, I think it was a Miller Lite commercial.
Oh, they were all Miller Lite
with him
commercials.
on it.
Yeah, he became one of their great spokesmen.
That could be something. I don't want to mention. I hate to do this because Michael never bring this up otherwise. But would have been good in your favorite old time Miller Lite commercial, because they had so many with Billy Martin and George Steinbrenner or L.C. Greenwood.
They were all good. YouTube's got them all, and they're just hysterical. I think mine was with Joe Frazier.
Yeah,
because Joe Frazier sings. And after
Really?
he sings, he's walking into a crowded bar with a bunch of backup singers, and he sings this song, and when he finishes, he smiles at the camera. And then he turns to look around, and then everybody starts applauding when he turns.
Really?
As if I'm not going to disappoint smoking Joe Frazier.
Yeah, of course.
So that one was probably my favorite of the Miller Lite commercials.
He
Of
did-
course,
well, you know
any
what?
of the Dick Butkus and Bubba Smith ones were great, too.
Oh, you're right. Well, you know what? All Joe Frazier would have to do was look at me and I'd applaud. He doesn't even have to sing. A guy like that, I have no hesitation.
Yeah.
Those were some of the best commercials back then. Those old Miller Lite ones. But yeah, Bob Euchre, for me, his performance in those movies, he was fantastic.
Now, I'm going to give you one more.
Sure.
Because there was one scene in this film where he was just outstanding, and it's one of my all-time favorite sports films, North Dallas 40.
Mm-hmm.
And in the locker room after they lose the big game they were playing against Chicago, when John Matuzak explodes on the assistant coach, which of course was played by a great actor named Charles Durning, was going to win an Oscar 3 years later for
Really?
Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And John Matuzak just explodes on him, and it's just this great pure emotion that you expect from an actor, but certainly not a guy who at the time is getting ready to play another season with Oakland and win a Super Bowl in 1980.
Yeah.
And Matuzak's performance in North Dallas 40 is also one of my favorites.
John Matuzak, he was in a few movies, John Matuzak, rest his soul. He passed away several years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just imagine being that actor. I don't care whether you're acting as a movie. Imagine John Matuzak screaming at you. I don't care if it's a movie. This guy had a reputation as one of the most insane guys in the NFL. There's a story about him in the Super Bowl, when the Raiders went to the Super Bowl in 1980. They had a rule, because, the Raiders had this reputation as the wildest, this crazy bunch of rejects, and these guys who just went to the Raiders because no other team would sign them. But there was a story when they went to the Super Bowl in 1980, Gene Upshaw was one of the leaders on the team, and he talked about how they were going to put a moratorium on all this. They weren't going to go out. They were going to, I think after a while, they just went out and got out of their system. But then the second week, because it's a 2-week break, they were going to end it. They were going to put a moratorium on it, as I said, not go out as much. And so the first day of practice, the second week, they go to practice 5:30 a.m. They're on the bus, and Matuzak comes in on the bus from a whole night out in, I guess it was New Orleans or wherever. And Upshaw said, kind of almost accosted him and said, "Hey, I thought we said we weren't going to do this. That this game was too important, and all that." And Matuzak goes, "Hey, I went out there to make sure no one else was going out." Yeah,
Big John, and of course his name in the movie Caveman with Ringo Starr,
yeah,
Tundar.
really.
He was Tundar. Because he was the big guy who, of course, was married in the movie Caveman to the woman that Ringo Starr was actively pursuing.
Really?
Which, of course,
It's a
was
nice way to put it.
his real wife, Barbara.
Really?
Just a funny movie, Caveman, and John Matuzak was funny in that one.
And I have to just mention one more Miller Lite commercial with Marv Throneberry in it. The old former Yankee and Met Marv Throneberry.
I still don't know why they asked me to be in this commercial.
Marvelous Marv, as they called him. One of the 62 Mets. So that will just about wrap it up for today. Once again, thank you everyone for listening. Don't be afraid to comment and also subscribe. We'll be back here next week with the full crew, with Dan Mack and, of course, Mike here as always. But for Mike Eccles, you're listening to The Sports Station, and we will see you back here next week.